Jill Duggar's courtroom drama. Shocking new case exposes family secrets. The moment Jill Duggar walked into the courthouse, the air shifted. This was not just another Duggar family appearance, not another carefully staged moment of faith-filled smiles for the cameras. This was confrontation. This was exposure. And this was rebellion wrapped in the language of justice. Jill, once known as the obedient daughter of Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar, appeared now not as a passive bystander, but as a woman determined to peel back the layers of silence, secrecy, and manipulation that have long defined her family's empire. The whispers from inside the courtroom painted a picture of tension so thick that even seasoned reporters felt the weight of history pressing against the walls. A daughter challenging her father, a former child star reclaiming her voice, and a family empire teetering under the burden of its own hypocrisy. The big theme here is not simply one daughter's lawsuit. It is the collapse of a narrative, the exposure of a system built on control, financial manipulation, and emotional gaslighting. For years, the Duggars sold America an image. A smiling family of 19 children, all living under strict religious rules, presenting themselves as the model of purity and Christian values. But beneath that glossy picture, cracks began to form. Now those cracks have erupted into a courtroom battle that threatens to unravel the very foundation of what Jim Bob once built. Jill's case is not just a legal dispute over money. It is a symbolic rebellion against decades of silence and control. Witnesses described Jill as composed but visibly burdened when she took her seat inside the courtroom, her husband Derek Diller beside her, both aware of the magnitude of the moment. Their fight is not new. They have long hinted at financial exploitation, revealing how cast members were never truly given the money they earned during years of filming 19 Kids and Counting and its spin-offs. Instead, contracts were allegedly funneled through Jim Bob, who held the purse strings tightly, doling out only what he saw fit, while amassing wealth for himself under the guise of protecting the family. This is where the story begins to move from private whispers to public reckoning. The legal documents filed in court have already hinted at missing payments, hidden deals, and the kind of manipulative contracts that could only survive in an environment of fear and silence. To understand how we reached this point, we need to step back into the Duggar timeline. In the early years of 19 Kids and Counting, the family portrayed themselves as united under God, disciplined, joyful, and debt-free. But behind the curtain, control was absolute. Every contract, every paycheck, every detail was managed by Jim Bob. The children, who were the true labor force of the show, had no access to their own earnings. They were minors, dependent, and under the strict authority of their father, who dictated not only their daily lives, but also their financial futures. Jill, like her siblings, grew up believing this was normal. That obedience meant sacrifice, that silence meant loyalty, and that questioning meant betrayal. But cracks began to form when Jill married Derek. Unlike some Duggar sons-in-law, who quietly adapted to Jim Bob's system, Derek asked questions. He wanted to know where the money was, what the contract said, and why the couple was not receiving compensation for their appearances. Those questions, insiders say, triggered backlash. Jill and Derek were accused of being rebellious, disloyal, even greedy. But in reality, those questions exposed the heart of the Duggar empire, a system that thrived on exploitation, on silencing dissent, on manipulating its own children through faith-based guilt. This was not just a family, it was a machine, a business empire disguised as holiness. And now that empire is being dissected in the courtroom. Jill's testimony reportedly revealed moments of pressure, coercion, and deep emotional scars. She recounted how asking for financial transparency led to isolation from her family, how conversations often turned into accusations of betrayal. In the language of gaslighting, her father twisted her demands for fairness into signs of rebellion against God's order. The courtroom listened as Jill described the weight of being silenced, the shame of being cast out, and the realization that the loyalty demanded of her was nothing more than a tool of control. Observers note that Jim Bob's demeanor in the courtroom was striking. Stoic, rigid, and defiant, he reportedly refused to acknowledge wrongdoing, instead painting himself as the protector of the family, the victim of his daughter's accusations. This is the heart of the Duggar narrative, turning accountability into persecution, recasting control as leadership, and reframing manipulation as fatherly love. It is hypocrisy at its most chilling, and the courtroom became the stage where that hypocrisy was finally being challenged under oath. But this case is not only about Jill versus Jim Bob. It is about the ripple effects across the Duggar siblings. Some have quietly signaled support for Jill, liking her posts, hinting at solidarity. Others remain silent, bound either by loyalty, fear, or continued dependence on Jim Bob's financial and spiritual authority. The family that once stood shoulder to shoulder on television now finds itself divided, fragmented, and publicly exposed. The courtroom drama has become a mirror reflecting the dysfunction fans long suspected but never fully saw. As the case progresses, documents and testimonies are expected to reveal more. Financial records may show how much money the shows generated, how much was diverted, and how little was shared with the children whose lives were exploited for entertainment. There are whispers that additional contracts, side deals, and secret accounts may come to light, each one a thread unraveling the myth of Duggar perfection. For every revelation, the weight of betrayal grows heavier, the depth of manipulation clearer. This is not just about money. It is about the moral bankruptcy of an empire built on control. The drama outside the courtroom is equally intense. Reporters, fans, and critics gather, each interpreting events through their own lens. Some see Jill as a hero, finally speaking truth to power, embodying the courage that her siblings cannot yet find. Others, often Duggar loyalists, accuse her of tearing down her family for fame or money. But the deeper analysis reveals that this is not destruction, it is liberation. By exposing the system, Jill is not tearing her family apart. She is tearing apart the chains of silence that bound them. The timing of this case also cannot be ignored. In the aftermath of Josh Duggar's conviction, the family's carefully crafted image has already been shattered. The courtroom battle between Jill and Jim Bob is not happening in a vacuum. It is happening in the ruins of a fallen empire. Each revelation in court adds to the crumbling facade, each testimony reminding the world that behind the curtain of piety was an empire of exploitation, hypocrisy, and manipulation. As the days unfold, one cannot help but see this case as a climax years in the making. From the early smiles on TLC to the dark headlines of scandal, and now to the courtroom showdown, the Duggar saga reads like a tragedy written in slow motion. Jill's case represents not only her fight for justice, but also the symbolic collapse of her father's control. The courtroom has become the final battlefield, where truth collides with manipulation, where exposure crushes secrecy, and where one daughter's voice threatens to dismantle a legacy of silence. And so, the question lingers. What will be revealed next? What secrets are still hidden in contracts, in bank accounts, in whispered conversations? The courtroom drama is far from over, but already the impact is undeniable. Jill Duggar has forced the world to look again at the family once idolized, to see not the smiles but the scars, not the obedience but the control, not the holiness but the hypocrisy. The Duggar empire is trembling, and with every day in court, more of its secrets are being dragged into the light.